coming up in today's video, we're going to spend a little bit more time on the Tiftuf lawn here. It's been a few weeks since renovation and it's now time for us to give this a groom. It's hard to believe that it's been about 6.5 weeks since Emerson and I came in here, took this right down to dirt, top dress, fertilized, and bring it back to what we see here today. And 6.5 weeks on, I've still been able to maintain this using the walk behind, which does give a nice clean cut. Now, as I mentioned before, I can keep this lower with the walk behind, and it's still currently sitting at the 9mm. And my plan is to keep this going at that height with that machine for as long as I possibly can. And once it gets away from me, then unfortunately I'll jump back on the triplex, which is still a great machine as well. But I'm gonna have to come up to 12mm, and it won't give quite the same height of cut or the same weight of cut on the lawn because the cylinder heads on that are much lighter than that walk behind is. Now, back to today's video. A lot of people ask me, what is grooming? How often should I groom? And when should I groom? So grooming is essentially, and I'll break it down so it's very, very simple for everybody to sort of get their head around. It's a very shallow, in other words, not very deep. It's a very shallow, non-invasive scarify, if you will. So it's basically designed, it's not going to do huge thatch corrections. It's not going to do anything like that. If you need to do that, you've got to go back to a scarify. What this will do is, this will just stand up any grain that's happening. So in other words, if you're mowing the same path every single time, maybe you prefer to have some stripes burnt in, this is going to be less of an issue for you. But for golf courses, etc., who always change their direction of cut to avoid the grain, so in other words, the ball doesn't get an advantage running one way and a resistance going the other way. So what it's going to do is, it's going to stand up that, it's going to open up that upper canopy profile, because we're going very, very shallow here. It's going to open that canopy up, it's going to stand grass up, it is going to let a little bit of light in, it's going to let a little bit more nutrient penetrate down, it's going to stand up grass that may be laying over a little bit, and it's also going to help to minimize things such as disease and water runoff. So today we're going to give it our first groom of the season. I've decided I'm going to aim to do this once a month. Now, there's no rhyme or reason or right or wrong. It really is a case-by-case situation. And for me, the best way to tell when it's about time to start grooming is particularly coming out of a renovation. So when you are coming out of your springtime renovation, so we've got our amazing recovery, we've all seen the photos online on various social outlets, etc. And we've got our lawn looking absolutely mint, absolutely postcard perfect. It's probably at that point there, or even a week before that point, when you feel, oh, next month it's going to be better. That's probably the time that you start with your first groom. Now, I would have liked to have done that 2 weeks ago. Time got away on me. We're now about 6 and a bit weeks. So definitely time here now. So I'm going to go over it once with my Scott Bonner 45, which is a restored mower, which I've converted into a grooming machine. So we'll have a look at that, and then we'll get into it. Okay, so this is the mower I'm going to use today. Now, this will be a familiar machine to most of you watching this channel. It is actually an old Scott Bonner, and I did a full resto on this quite a few years ago now, and I've changed out the cutting reel for a grooming reel here. Now, spacing of these are about 1 centimetre apart, and the tips on this particular one are in fact tungsten tipped. Now, setting these things at height, what is the correct height for grooming? Now, there's a couple of schools of thought on that, but for me personally, I generally go down half the mowing height. So if you're mowing like I am here at 9mm, technically 4.5. So somewhere between 4 and 5mm would be my suggestion on that there. If you're mowing at 12mm, 6mm would be your height of cut, because we're not looking to go down to dirt. We're just looking to get into that upper canopy. And I don't know if you can see that here, but you'll cut off little bits like this. So we've got a runner here that's running across the ground. So this will actually manage to chop things off like that, and also encourage this lawn to keep growing nice and upright, which is what I'd like to see happen. Thinking out loud here for a moment, I'm thinking of getting my hands on one of those battery Ryobi machines, just for reference for you guys, because that's obviously going to be within reach for a lot of you guys, easier I guess than having something like this at your disposal. So I'd like to maybe be able to get one of those and just have a little play around with one and see how I can best relate that sort of a machine to you guys and how I feel they work. Do I think it's worth the money? So down the track I might do something like that. Let me know in the comments if that would be something you'd be interested in seeing and hearing my feedback on what I think of the Ryobi style battery scarifier groomer verticutter machine. Something I've been thinking about there, just to help some relevance for you guys at home. So anyway, look, we'll hook in here now. We'll go over this. The other concept is when we do this, we're aiming for very minimal surface disruption. And in fact, by the time we go over this, the idea is that you won't really see a great deal of damage or disruption, if you will, to the lawn at all. So that's the other key to doing grooming. It's very non-invasive. So enough talk, let's get on with it. As you can see from these passes I've done here, we've got very minimal surface disruption, but what we have actually got, we've got these pieces here, which are being stood up, dredged up, and when we come through now with our cylinder mower for our final cut, these here will all get picked up, cut up, thrown into the catcher. This will also stimulate new growth from those points, aiding to a more upright and thicker lawn. Now, in the catcher here, there doesn't look to be much, but for a couple of passes, there is. And you can see we've got a mix of two, well, here's a few bits here, look. So as you can see, it does pick up these bits, and it does chop away some of the dead material as well. So we've got a pretty even mix here of dead grass and green grass. Again, I'm still quite comfortable with that. There's no concerns, because when we look up here, it doesn't actually look like we've done a great deal, but that's the name of the game, because this is, as I said before, a very subtle maintenance regime rather than a hardcore renovation. So let's press on now and we'll get the whole lot done. We'll see how much grass we get out of this whole area. You can see as we walk over this area now, quite a lot of runners that have been dredged up to the surface, particularly through here. There's spots where there's going to be more than other spots, but yeah, definitely just goes to show what is hiding underneath a pretty nice surface. Now, I suppose a purpose-built machine may actually clip a little bit more of this off during the process, but this still does a pretty good job. The 1600, the Greensmaster 1600, the walk behind that I've been mowing this with, actually does have the benefit of what's called an onboard grooming reel. So it can actually groom and mow at the same time. Now, at the moment, I haven't got the belt on that, hence why I'm doing this. Plus, it's probably, once again, a little bit more relevant to you guys than me just grooming and mowing all in one go, because obviously the grooming and mowing concept would straight away take care of all this in one foul swoop. And that's why at the end of this, we'll go over this area with that mower and give it a tidy up mow. As we move over here now to this section that I'm yet to groom, you can see that we can't see really any of those surface runners or any of those stole-ons, if you will, but they are just hiding just beneath the upper layer there of the canopy. And before long, once we run over it, we'll be back to where we were over here, lifting those and exposing those runners. Really amazing to see exactly how much material that we've dredged up from just beneath the surface with this machine. We've got a mixture there of green grass, dead grass, stole-ons, which are your surface runners, etc. And as I look around the area, all that I see is still a nice green, lush, healthy surface, a couple of crooked stripes where this thing skates around a little bit on this smoother sloping ground. And I'm really keen now to put that 1600 on it, that walk behind Toro, just to give it the final clean up and get this thing looking really, really good. Okay, fun fact. I've just done the Santa Ana as well, off camera. I wasn't gonna do them both on camera because I thought, well, you get the idea, but I'm gonna go over there and show you what's going on there, because these two grasses, although they're both couch grasses, have sort of responded somewhat differently, and they were renovated only one day apart. So instantly the first thing I noticed when I tip out this catcher here, lots more dead grass. Equal amount of material, just more dead grass. Now, as I mentioned before, as we look around the Tiftuf, it doesn't really look as if the surface has been affected, apart from lifting up these stole-ons everywhere, which we'll collect in a moment with the mower. When we come over here, the first thing I notice is it's lighter in colour, and it has lifted up a lot more of the grass itself as well. It's really, really stood it up, and if anything, maybe the stripes are a little bit more pronounced. Now, these two grasses have had exactly the same care as each other. There's been no variation. It's just two different varieties of couch grass. So it's going to be very interesting once we put the mower on this to see how much of a colour difference we get, how much more or how much less grass we collect off it when we mow it. So this has sort of turned into a bit of an interesting thing, because I didn't actually stop to think for a minute there'd be any variation at all. But this one here, we've got a lot more grass standing up. Now, I've noticed with this grass here this season, this Santa Ana, that it has been somewhat more leggy and upright. Now, potentially it's been like that all along, and I've just now got something else to compare it to, which is a bit different, but it's really starting to show some variations, and probably not as favourable as what I'm finding in the Tiftuf. So we'll get to this one after I've mown the Tiftuf, and we'll see how they both look after a mow, and see if there's any difference to the surface quality. But that was a bit of a surprise, because I didn't think there'd be any difference. Tiftuf looks as good as it was before we started, minus a tiny little bit of puffiness, etc. Colour still glows. I've talked about this before. For me, Tiftuf really does have a glow about it, and it's probably the best way I can describe it. I don't really know one shade of green to the other, but one thing I do notice about this grass, it does have a glow about it, and it always seems to when it's on point. So apart from my couple of crooked lines there, I'm pretty happy with that. I'll finish off this strip here now, and we'll go over the other side there. We'll give that Santa Ana a cut and see what it comes up like. That was really interesting because I got quite a bit more grass off this Santa Ana than I did the Tiftuf. However, this reacted more aggressively to the Groom. It lifted the grass up a lot more than it did on the Tiftuf, and it is displaying quite a bit more white, if you will. So some of the stalky material of Cooch can get a bit of a white sheath around it, if you will, and this is displaying so much more of that, where it's nearly unnoticeable in the Tiftuf, but here in the Santa Ana it's a lot more noticeable. The color's a lot less, and the other thing is it's a lot finer, or sorry, it's not any finer. This here is probably less dense. In other words, it's not as thick as what the Tiftuf is. So interesting one, that probably in the next couple of days, probably next episode even, I'm going to chuck down another application of granular fertilizer. Now I'm going to go very, very light on the Tiftuf because it has a very low nutrient requirement, but I'm just going to keep spoon feeding it some granular product throughout the season just to see how it performs, and I'll use probably similar rate here on the Santa Ana, or I might just go a little bit heavier to compensate the fact that this does prefer a slightly higher nitrogen content than the Tiftuf does. We'll wrap the video up here. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and we'll catch you next time on the Aussie Lawn.